Heen Dog, man, welcome to the Spark. I'm so fired up to have you. I'm Daniel Robertson. It's Andrew Heaney, big league pitcher for the Los Angeles Angels. Feels so weird saying Los Angeles, but welcome to the show, man. I'm so pumped you're here.
Thanks for having me on, D-Rob.
No problem, man. I look forward to this. I've always been able to pick your brain. I know we were teammates for a year and roommates too. I know a lot about you, but I think I want the kids to know a little bit more about you and who you are as a person, because you're real quiet. You're a secluded person. You enjoy your private time, family guy. You love dogs. But I want people to know a little bit of your struggle and your successes and how you were able to overcome those things mentally, emotionally, whatever. We're just going to run with it.
Let's do it.
When you were growing up, being a lefty, it's not normal. You had a lot of people that you were able to watch. Who were some of the lefties that you watched growing up, maybe modeled your game after, or just enjoyed to watch pitch?
For me, like when I was a kid, I was always an Indians fan. Even though I grew up in Oklahoma, went to mostly Rangers games. I think it started like when I was in Little League. I played on a team that was called the Indians, and it was kind of one of the first like big, you get a team name where it's like a big league team.
Yeah.
And so I just started like naturally like, oh no, like I wonder, like this is the team I play for. I wonder who plays for their Indian team. So I kind of started watching, and that was kind of around like, when they were starting to really get good and turn over some guy, they had the Kenny Loftons, Manny
Yeah, like
Ramirez, like all,
the mid
all
'90s Indians.
the whole Jim Thome's, all those guys. So when I started paying attention, to the pitchers. They actually, had a couple good lefties in Cliff Lee, CC Sabathia. So those were the guys that I would say I first started watching, and maybe it's not that I intentionally modeled my game after them or anything, but, you just watch people enough. It's kind of like you just sort of pick up on their tendencies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the first two guys. And then, I'm sure every left-handed pitcher is always going to say Randy Johnson. Like you can't not say
Maybe.
that that's a dude that influenced you, so those would be the three guys that come to mind for me.
Those are good because they're so different.
Yeah.
Cliff Lee, I think, was a late bloomer. CC was, God, he was dominant with those early years. He had a phenomenal career. And then you got a dude that throws 100 who's 6'10". So
yeah.
I think those are all different ends of the spectrum. But definitely I would probably say your breaking ball is a little Cliff Lee-ish.
Yeah.
The thing's got some bite to it.
Yeah, I would say it falls somewhere. Like obviously not on the same level, but it falls somewhere in between the Cliff Lees and Randy Johnson. I got the little bit lower arm angle, not quite like Randy Johnson, but it's fun to like kind of see, like now that I'm playing, like look back at those guys and kind of like you said, how all their careers were really different. Cliff Lee was a little bit more of a late bloomer and was like a very like clutch performance guy, came through big for the teams that he was on. Then you had CC, who just had such a long career and really had to continually like remake himself even when his stuff, because people don't remember that dude was, he was throwing 98 to 100 like consistently when he first came up.
Yeah, he was.
And he completely like remodeled his game and started throwing more changeups, a little more cutters. Like, by the end of it, he was 88, 91 on, 92 on good days, and was still, going deep into games, getting a lot of people out. He dealt with a lot of like injury stuff with like his lower half too. So, I think just like kind of watching those guys, and then, Randy Johnson was just always a freak athlete, and, just like had ridiculous stuff, but early on had no clue where the ball was going. Really didn't really kind of settle into being that, dominant presence until a couple years after, I think, being with the Expos when he finally kind of like turned it on.
Absolutely. And I remember in 15 when we were teammates, he pitched against us at our place in Anaheim. And I don't know how close you kind of watched him go about his business. That was probably a different moment for you. Obviously we all have our starstruck moments sometimes where we see people that we grew up against. But I remember being in the lineup facing him, and the first at bat I had against him, I remember freaking out because he was one of those guys. He was one of those guys that I grew up watching, that I grew up being a fan of. And then now here I am getting ready to try to find a way to help our team win. but also get through those nerves. And I remember he threw me like a cutter and I rolled it to short, and I was running down the line wondering how the heck I missed it. But I was still thinking in my mind, because you were so enamored by it. Do you remember him? Do you remember that game? I mean, you've had several games since then.
I honestly, I don't. I might have, you know.
That's true. If it was your off day, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I can't remember,
yeah.
but I mean, I've seen him throw a couple times, and just, CeCe's just got like that presence to him, and
he's not a small man. He's not big.
No, he's a large dude. He's like 6'7".
Yeah, and people give him bad time for being quote unquote out of shape or whatnot, but how in shape can you be at 6'7"? I mean,
6'7". I mean, he's just a big body, man, like big dude.
And he's got a long delivery too.
And towards the end, like, he was in really good shape. Like I said, like, he had a lot of those like knee, hip, ankle like issues and stuff, I think, like, for a while. And just I remember there was a stretch there for like 2 years. I mean, it was like probably the 10s to 12s, somewhere in there, like, where he kind of was, maybe it was a little later than that, where he was kind of, I think, convinced to sort of lose some weight and get in better, people are saying get in better shape. And I remember I watched him throw, and I was like, it just doesn't feel the same. Like, it's like some stuff just works for some people, man. Like, and you can't put everybody into that mold and put them in that box and just say, like, this is what you have to be successful,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And now let's shift gears a little bit to your debut. I mean, June 19th, 2014, for those that don't know, threw 6 innings. I have a problem with it because you threw 6 innings, you gave up 4 hits, you punched 3, and you gave up 1 run, but you got the loss.
Yeah. So
like, what the?
Yeah. It was against the Mets in Miami. Gave up a first inning home run to David Wright, which, I mean, for, your first big league homer, first guy to clip you, David Wright's not a bad guy to have do it. And he basically put it off that ugly sculpture out there in left center.
Yeah, that $1 million sculpture.
Yeah. And well, it's ugly for me because anytime it went off, it meant somebody hit a homer off me. But
it was just ugly being out there. No offense, Miami.
Yeah. But like, after that, I kind of settled in, and, like you said, went 5 scoreless after that. It's funny, like, a lot of people talk about, like, the nerves and stuff of your big league debut. And I remember not being nervous, like, having, like, I'd like to think it was a sense of calm, but it was probably more a sense of just sort of numbness, like, where you're kind of out there. And, I remember not being, it's not like I wasn't focused, but I wasn't locked in. Like, I wasn't in that flow state where you're just sort of like, you're going and you're performing at optimal level, but you're not having to really think about it. I think it was, for me, just more of trying to remain calm and trying to, you can't force yourself into that flow. Like, it has to come. But I don't remember being nervous. Like, it was weird. I mean, it felt like a road game because we were playing the Mets, and, like, all the New York fans down there in Miami, like, they were showing up to support the Mets more than they were the Marlins. But it was a good time. And
do you remember?
Got the hit, so I had to face Zach Wheeler, and that was when he was, like, just really throwing hard.
Yeah.
And actually, I put a ball in play. I was just late barreled a ball down the third baseline to David Wright, but he was on the line. He just picked it nice and easy and flipped it over to first. So it took me quite a while to get my first hit. So it wasn't going to happen against Zach Wheeler, not that day.
And then you were like, God, David Wright, you're just on me today, taking away my hits.
Again, like, if you're going to get beat by somebody, I'd rather beat somebody that is that revered, not just
so true
random dude.
Do you remember one specific moment from your debut? Like, just something that anybody maybe couldn't see? I know I remember from your debut, I think it might have been one of your clean innings. You jogged off the mound.
Okay, so that's funny you say that. I don't remember that, but we were watching some of the video the other day of my debut, and I got like a ground ball or a punch out. I don't remember what it was, but like to end the inning, and I
Pretty sure it was
jogged
a
off.
punch out. It was a punch out.
And I was watching the video, and I was like, oh, come on, Heen, like, what are you doing, man? Like, it's like, act like you've been there one time, like. But I mean, that's kind of how it is, though. Like I was saying, like, you're just zoned out. You're just sort of, you don't know what you're doing. You don't really. That's like what takes so much time. Like that's where guys talk about like having the game. A lot of people use the phrase like having the game speed up on you. Like to me, it's not so much about speeding up on you. It's being aware of what's going on, being aware of your surroundings. You watch a lot of guys, like they'll make their debut on the mound, and it'll be a track meet, right? Like guys will just be stealing bags left and right because they're not really focused. You're just kind of zoned out. Like it's, some people say the game's speeding up on you, but really it's like just this lack of awareness and this lack of just kind of savvy and having, the wherewithal to kind of pay attention to the little things. Like I wasn't thinking about counts. I wasn't thinking about pitch selection. I wasn't thinking, what I mean? It's just straight up like, I got the ball and I'm going to try and get it past you. Like,
Yeah.
And beyond that, like, this sense of like, yeah, you want to have a good debut. Like you don't want your first debut to go horribly wrong, but sort of a little sense, maybe that sense of calm of like nobody's going to like crush you for having a bad debut, right? Like you will not be the first guy to get abused on your debut, So I think sometimes having those, they're not great positive thoughts, but just sort of neutral thoughts of just sort of, hey, just go out there and do your best,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's funny. Have you jogged off the mound since?
I do it a little bit. I definitely would say no, not as much. It happens every once in a while. I think sometimes it's within like like if if you're on the third base dugout, your team's in the dugout, like if something kind of takes you that way, you just kind of let the momentum kind of take you. But no, like I definitely walk off the field, and usually I pull my glove off and kind of like carry it off once I get like past the third baseline or first baseline. So yeah, I kind of like developed a routine. That's definitely something I don't like intentionally do.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you debuted with the Marlins, so I think at that time when you debuted, I think the dynamic of the roster wasn't maybe as veteran presence, but who were a couple of guys that maybe after your debut or just before that maybe you kind of leaned on, or that gave you some sort of advice when you were about to have your first debut, or just were there to kind of talk you through now going forward? Because we all know getting the first one out the way is huge, but then now this game, you either start to learn or you don't, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there was a group of the starting pitchers. It was Nate Eovaldi, Tom Kohler, and Jacob Turner. That was kind of like the core group there, and probably the guys that I would say I would at least lean. I mean, like you said it off the top, man. Like I'm pretty quiet, I'm pretty reserved, and was definitely not going to get to the big leagues and be ruffling feathers or trying to stand out by any means. So I mean, like I spent a lot of games in a Marlins uniform, just sitting on the bench by myself, just spitting seeds and watching the game. And every team's different, like you said. Like there's certain dynamics where you get to a team that's got a little bit more veteran presence, and they're going to have guys that kind of scoop you under their wing and kind of like show you the ropes. You might have some veteran guys that kind of like I don't want to say beat you down, but just sort of like keep you in your place, keep you humble, and sort of maybe not help you do the right things, but they'll definitely let you know when you're doing the wrong things. And then, the group we had there in Miami, like, all those guys ended up like having pretty good careers. I mean, I know Tom Kohler just retired. Jacob Turner's had some really crazy injury issues, but I mean, was a really good player. And then obviously Eovaldi, like doing what he's done here recently. But they weren't quite those guys yet. I think Eovaldi was kind of maybe the closest to sort of being the dude that he is now. But Nate's a guy too, that he's such a humble dude, Texan, like just hard worker. I mean, guy's an absolute animal in the weight room. Like he's funny. He's a good dude, joker, like a good guy, but just sort of, he's not going to be the guy to really step out and go out of his way to mentor you or to like, not haze you, but you know what I mean? Like he's that group, they were just like kind of down to earth dudes, and they just they had their kind of their clique. And like when you're a rookie, you don't really come in and try and just force your way into a group, right? Like you just sort of let things play out naturally. So there was definitely a lot of time that I spent just on my own, and frankly, like it wasn't my favorite part of my life or career. Like I really I didn't hate it, but I didn't like, I wasn't like, oh, this is the big leagues, this is what I dreamt of, right? Like,
right.
But I think that's, maybe I'm wrong, that's par for the course for a lot of guys, especially guys like me. You know, I was a first rounder, I was a top prospect, but I wouldn't say I was a guy that was a can't miss superstar. You know, like I'm not coming in the league and setting the world on fire. So I know I got to keep my head down and do what I can to maintain my job security, you know, my job status. I think that was kind of first and foremost in my mind.
Yeah, and you got to the big leagues rather fast. I mean, drafted in 12, you debut in 14. So to me, you recognized kind of your inefficiencies early, the things that you need to work on.
Yeah.
And you worked on them rather fast. What were some of the things that you felt you had to deal with coming out of Oklahoma State and going into pro ball? And then how did you fix them? Because in 2 years, I mean, for the betterment of 2 years, could have been a little over, but that's really fast. So how did you address those so quickly to give yourself the best chance to become a big leaguer?
I mean, I guess it all kind of, I would say it starts a little bit like before getting to the pro ball. Like when I got drafted out of high school and pretty much knew that physically I just wasn't ready to play in pro ball. I mean, when I got drafted out of high school, I was 6'1", 145 pounds, maybe, you know, as an 18-year-old. And just didn't feel like that was going to cut it, like playing, you know, 150 games in the minor leagues and trying to pitch 30 games a year. So I went to school, and that was the first thing, you know, I weighed in at 147. And a funny story I always like to tell is, so we have first day of anything, right? Like you're always nervous. First day of class, first day of practice, first day, like you got those nerves, you're excited. So we're in the weight room and we're getting ready to do like testing. And I look over and there's like 3 benches set up with 45s on either side, 135. And they're getting ready to do a bench press test. And our strength coach has his clipboard and he's got everybody's name on there. And I'm looking around and I'm like, man, like in my head, I'm going, uh-oh, this isn't good. And I'm like, what do I do here? So I walk over because I know I can't press that, not even one time. Like 135, dude, that's like as much as I weigh. Like I can't press that. So I go over to our strength coach and I go, hey man, Tracy, like I can't do that. Like I can't do that. And he goes, what's your name? And I'm like, Heaney. And he's like, you're a pitcher, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, y'all don't do this. You're doing the push-up test. And I was like, whew, you know, like took a deep breath out. Like, cause I was legitimately thinking like, what am I going to do if he calls my name? Am I just going to go get under there and just pretend like I'm about to rep these things out and then just let it absolutely crush me? Or am I going to just tap out like day one and be like, nah, man, like not going to do that? You know, what's my strategy?
You could have done like, you know what? When I was playing catch today, I had a little pinch in my shoulder.
Give it the pinch in the shoulder. Can't do this today. So I was just like, I knew from that day forward, like, all right, like I got a lot to do physically to get myself in shape, not only to hold up against, frankly, pretty much everybody I'm playing against is going to be bigger, stronger, and more developed than me. And I've kind of adopted that mentality all the way through. I mean, even when I got drafted as a junior out of college, right? I'm 21 years old. The night that I get drafted, I'm 21 years old. The night. Like I turned 21 and got drafted the same night. And
that's a great day right there.
It was pretty cool, man. I had my family, I had my dad, had a beer with my dad. Like it was a pretty cool thing, man. And I remember thinking like, I may be a first rounder, but like I still have a lot to prove. And so long answer to your question is, I felt comfortable in my ability on the field. It was the things off the field that I needed to do a better job of. And I had never really experienced winning in baseball, and I honestly still really haven't.
Right. We were so close in 15, man. That still eats at me.
Yeah, I mean, I just have never and I can't say I've even been a part. Most guys are coming from these college programs where they were there for 3 or 4 years and they went to the College World Series 2 times, and they, you know what I mean? Like the North
Yeah.
Carolinas, the Texases, all these places. Like I made one, we made one regional my sophomore year, which was my worst year. Like I was terrible. I was on midweek games, like in relief, like getting beat up against Wichita State. And we go to Vanderbilt, proceed to get our asses kicked by Troy, and then we played. Oh my goodness, I can't even remember the name of the school. Belmont. It
Oh
was in
no.
Nashville, like a small school I'd never even heard of, and then they just kicked us, and that was it. Like that's the most, like that was the highest level of playing like I had experienced, before I got to pro ball. So even that is something that like it kind of has to be learned. Like you can't until you experience that. So like all of those things to me are things that I wanted to improve upon and just experience and get better at, because I had all the confidence in the world when I was on the mound. I knew how to hold runners. I knew how to field my position. I could spin a breaking ball. Like I had a decent enough fastball. I could develop a changeup. Like those things to me weren't ever really the challenge. It was the other things that gave me the hardest time.
I mean, and then you go to the Angels, a program that, or an organization that wants to win. I touched on it a moment ago. I mean, we lose on the last damn
Yeah.
day to the Rangers.
Yep.
Who could you say now that, with you being the Angels, I know you were there with Weave. We had Weave, we had Houston, we had some pretty prominent guys. Was there anybody with the Angels now that when you got there, a change of scenery that had more vets, was it someone there? Because I was with you obviously almost every day.
Yeah.
But there's still that time in the day where we separate. I got to
Yeah.
go do my position player thing and you got to do your pitcher thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I talk about like the veterans that want to kind of like keep you in your place, beat up on you a little bit. I mean, that's definitely Weave, right? Like great dude, like fun to be around, but not a guy you wanted to be on his bad side. I mean, he's terrifying.
Oh,
Like, I mean,
absolutely.
I hope anybody out there who knows him or has seen him play or even just operate on a day-to-day basis, like he's intimidating. But again, like I was a guy that didn't concern me because I knew I wasn't going to go out there and mess up, like I wasn't going to go, I'm not going to be late. I'm not going to like, I'm not even going to like put myself in a position to get crushed, so he was definitely a guy that, it took me a while to want to pull up next to him on the bench and just kind of talk to him, but like he'd shoot you straight and let you know, and just kind of give you some tidbits here and there that you may not even been thinking about, but most of the time I'm sitting there with, Garrett Richards, Skaggs, like those are the guys that probably at that time I'm finding myself, and I find a parallel between, like I was saying, with Eovaldi, Kohler, and Turner. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of felt like that was now my group with like G Rich and Skaggs. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
how I felt. And then, you talked about Houston Street, like a guy that had saved, at that point, almost 300 games.
Yeah. We were part of his 300 save, and that when we
Yeah.
had champagne in the locker room,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
one of the cooler moments of my career.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see some pretty damn cool milestones. I've seen 600 homers.
Yep.
I've seen 3,000 hits. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
300 saves. I've seen a cycle. I've been no hit against. I've been on a
Yeah.
team that did a combined no hitter. So I mean, I've seen some really cool shit, man. Like I really think, like now that I'm listening it off, I'm like, damn, I've seen a lot, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in person, right? Like
Because
I've
those
been,
are some things that we get so wrapped up in the day to day that
man.
we forget how enjoyable the game is, even at the big league level.
You play 162 games, like you try and break down like one game or a lot of those, like I said, like those are other people's achievements. Like I was there, I lived it, I enjoyed it, I savored every moment for that person, right? Like I'm excited as all hell for my own teammates. And you know what, a little bit like when we're getting no hit, like I've never seen this before, right? Like I'm sitting there in Miami, it was the last game of the year, and Zimmerman for the Nationals was no-hitting us. And I was just kind of like, I didn't say this to anybody, but I'm sitting on the bench going like, man, I kind of hope he does this. Like, I want to see it. I've never seen a no-hitter in person. And
I mean, it's true.
It's game 162. Like, we were out of it. Like, nobody, like, I don't want to say nobody cared, but like, I was just like, this
that guy, it's okay. That guy on the mound, he's at his best right now, and I kind of want to see it. And I think a lot of people forget about that. They get lost up in their own mind where it's, oh, I'm getting my butt kicked today. I'm failing today. And they don't take a time to go, hey, that guy gets paid too. That guy wants to be great too.
Those other teams aren't just rolling over. They don't care whether you win or lose. They're trying to beat you down. And like, I don't ever want to see my team lose, and I definitely don't want to be a part of a loss. But at the same time, like, somebody's going to beat you, you got to respect them, right? Like, you got to respect when you witness either a great moment or a great player. Like, I'll never be bitter about that. Like, it's just not something I'm going to be bitter about.
No, not at all. I love that. I think that's, and for those that don't know about you were drafted out of high school with 24th round in 2009 to the Royals, and then
Rays.
And no, your one-hit shutout was against the Royals. So you get with them, and then you're drafted in 12 by the Marlins, and that's two different dynamics. And I think you touched on it perfectly about what you needed to do to get better. And I think not very many young kids have the wherewithal. They just think, oh, I'm drafted. What an opportunity. But you sat back and took the time to be able to say, hey, I need to get better at this. So I need to take the time to do this.
Yeah, I think for me, it was almost like a pressure, a good pressure of like, I don't want to be like a flame out. Like, I don't want to be the guy that like, dude, you were the number 9 overall pick and you couldn't even get out of high A. Like, I don't want to be that guy. And I definitely didn't want to do it for like personal reasons, right? Like, you see so many, like you've seen in pro ball, bro. It's like, you see so many guys that it's like, they can't just manage their own time. Like, they just can't be places on time. They can't wrap their brain around like just making dinner or like being able to just like little things, man. Like, just, it's crazy. Like, not trashing your hotel room, like not, you know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy stuff like that that gets guys kicked out of pro ball early on. And like, dudes get weeded out that like, you're sitting there going like, damn, I thought that guy was pretty good. Like, he could have been a professional player. Like, whether he got to the big leagues or not, like, he could have been like a long time, like, minor league dude. Like, he could have stuck around, like, just from pure baseball standpoint. So that was the pressure for me, really, was just like, man, I don't want to like disappoint myself. Like, I don't want to disappoint other people. Like, just because I fooled the Marlins into drafting me number 9 overall.
We all fool, bro.
Right? Like, doesn't mean it's time to just say like, oh, it's time to coast. Like, I made it. Like, I just remember thinking like, this can't be the end of it. Like, I never expected to be like a good college player. Like, I expected to just kind of get, hang around, get some games in, like maybe spend a little bit of time in the classroom and like kind of move on with life. And then like, I get drafted again, and I'm just kind of thinking like, all right, like, well, if I'm doing this, like, obviously I'm going to make it like my whole life, like not just my career. And like, that sounds like extreme, but it's like, look, there's a small window, a small opportunity here to like really dedicate yourself to something and just prove to yourself like what you're capable of, right? Like, it's something that like I'm immensely proud of. Like, if my career, if it ended today, like, I'm immensely proud of what I've done. But like, I want to be able to tell people like, I got 10 years in the big leagues, and people be like, no way, like, you did not play 10. You know what I mean? Like, I want to shock people. Just, I want to impress. Like, I know that sounds weird, like not impress people, but just like, I want to like overachieve what people would ever expect, like some 6'1", 140-pound lefty from Oklahoma to do. Like, to me,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's where I find my greatest, like, pride. Like, and that we're talking about individually. Like, obviously, like, there's team accolades and things that we talked about that, like, I would love to. I've never played in the playoffs. Like, I'd love to do that first and foremost. I would love to get to a World Series. I'd love to win a World Series. I would love to be a part of a team. You know, like, I want to be not just along for the ride. You know, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a guy that's just like, well, I get a ring, but really I didn't contribute. You know, I don't
Right.
want to be. Nobody wants that. Like, you don't want to feel like, you know, like you were just benefiting off of others. Like, I want to be a part of that. So I think there's still, like, you know, and as athletes, like, that's what you do. Like, you just look for the next thing, the next goal, the next motivating factor to get you out there and outside of what you're supposed to do, right? Like,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm
Well,
saying? Like, that's what the greats are, is like, they just exceed all expectations.
and that's what it is, right? When we get drafted, we get player comps. And I think they're a little naive in a sense, because sometimes as a player you hear that and it's either motivating or, dang, that's where you value me at, sort of thing. You get both ends of the spectrum. But I think what drives you and your motivation when people think of you, especially being from Oklahoma, a small town, there's some kid that's right now that's grinding, going, well, Heaney did it, and everybody told me that he was too small, or that he didn't throw hard enough, or fill in the blank, because everybody's got an opinion and everybody thinks their opinion matters,
Right.
including mine doing the show, right? But everybody thinks that. And then all of a sudden, what does the next kid think? Where's the next kid's motivation come from? And I think you're inspiring other kids from your own hometown, and especially the kids that you meet being an Angel, those kids that get to sit behind the turtle. And when you pop out to shag, you get to talk to some of those kids and they have dreams. But that's where I think conversations like this and you opening up about what you're trying to do, we're simple beings, man. Yeah, we played in the big leagues, but we're simple. We have simple desires and we want to do it the right way. And it's not unachievable. That's what everybody thinks. They think being a big leaguer or you fooling someone for 10 years. I think it's this crazy idea.
Yeah. Who's your big league comp?
He was a Angels guy. Reggie Willits.
Okay. Yeah.
Reggie Willits. And I thought, dang, Reggie Willits. You know, when he watches this, no offense to Reggie Willits, I grew up watching him play.
Yeah.
But I thought, dang, I think I'm a little bit better than that.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. You can't control your player comp. Do you know yours?
Derek Holland. The Dutch oven, Derek Holland. He was on the
Rangers. I played with him with the Rangers, but I'm thinking like real long and kind of side sweepy.
Yeah,
the deliveries.
He was a little bit like more sweepier than I was, but I think that was just probably the best comp there was out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, well, he's a funny kid, man. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Very, very simple, like yourself. Loves to just be at home, playing video games on his projector. He's very to himself. He's very simple too. I went over to his house one day and he invited me over and we were just playing some video games. We were watching something. I don't remember what it was. But I pulled up to a beautiful house. You know, it had like 5 bedrooms, but there wasn't much furniture in it. And there wasn't much in it. You know what I mean? He had one CTS that was loud as hell. The engine was so loud. But he had 2 beautiful cars parked outside too. And I walk into the house thinking, where's everything at? But that's just what he was, man. He was just a simple guy.
Hey, I only spend my time in one room. Why furnish the rest of them?
That's a good point. I wasn't going to knock him. That's so funny. And when you talk about the flow state, let's talk about a little bit about flow, because I remember there was a game where you got a bloody nose. It was against the Rangers. And no, it was against the Cubs.
Cubs. Cubs.
It was against the Cubs. And it was like the second inning or something after the first pitch. And I felt like you didn't even notice it. You were just kind of like, what the heck? And then when you looked over and you started calling them out, I bet they were freaked out because it was right after a pitch.
So that's one hell of an interesting game, because So that would have been 2016.
Yeah, it was a
It was
year
the
after I
second
left.
game of the year. We were playing just a 2-game series against the Cubs to open up the season. And I had game 2. So I believe G-Rich started game 1. I think that was the year that he was the opening day. Maybe Weave had hurt himself. I can't remember, but I was pitching game 2. And it was like the second inning, and exactly like what you said. Like I was getting ready to like come set, and I looked down. There's like we were wearing home whites, and there was just like blood like splattered like all on my shoulder and like all kind of down my chest. And I kind of go like this. I'm like, oh man. So I'm like, well, I've always had a problem like with nosebleeds. I don't know why. I've had my nostrils cauterized like multiple times. It burns like hell, and then nothing happens. I still get bloody noses. So like we had just gotten, first games of the year, we had just gotten done with spring training in Arizona. So I'm sure my nose is all dry, whatever.
Yeah.
So I like kind of call the trainers out there, and Soch comes jogging out with Nevi, Adam Nevelo is our trainer.
Yeah.
And he comes out and he's like, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, well, first of all, like, dude, there's blood all over my jersey and my face. Like, surely you should be able to know what's going on. But then I told him, I was trying to say like, oh, there's blood. Like when I blew out, there's blood all. And so she goes like, you blew out? Like, he thought I like, like you blow out. Like that's the term you use.
Oh,
so I was like, no. So I had to go down, literally like go into the dugout. The umpire had to follow me down in there, like watch me like clean it all up, put the freaking, whatever. It's not a tampon, but whatever in your nose.
Right.
I had it like sticking out. Well, then I go back out to pitch and give up a couple runs. No big deal. I gave up a homer to Rizzo. So we're like cruising along, and then like I don't even remember like very vividly specifically like what inning it was, but that's it ended up that's the game that I tore my ligament. The first game I pitched in 2016. So like talk about like to this day I don't know if that's a thing where like I don't know if there's any correlation to like having a nosebleed and then like having a major injury. Like, I don't know if that was like a stress thing, like maybe.
Or an omen. Yeah, it was like an omen.
I don't know. I really don't.
Something's about to happen. I'm going to make the nose bleed. You should probably shut it down. This is just a warning.
I don't know. I really don't. But like at that point I was like, man, I have nosebleeds all the freaking time. We just came from dry Arizona. Like this is not that abnormal. Like, so anyway, so that was like a heck of a game because I think I hurt myself like in maybe the third or the fourth inning. So I mean, it's pretty soon after that. But it was kind of like, it wasn't like, some guys have like the full tear where it's like, I mean, you throw the ball and it doesn't even go. It either rolls to the plate or goes to the backstop, and immediately what happened. Like it wasn't like that for me. And I remember coming in and was kind of like, ugh, my elbow's kind of bothering me. It was like the first game of the year, and I felt great, man. Like I felt great. All spring training. I was throwing like 94, 95, like against the Cubs. Like I was feeling good. I mean, I'd given up a couple runs, but like I was feeling good. So I was like, man, I'm going to keep throwing. Like it's probably just some like flexor tightness or whatever, like no big deal. And I remember Charles Nagy, our pitching coach, came up to me and was like, hey, you all right? Like your velo went down a little bit. You good? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I think I'm just getting tired or something like, like first game of the year, you're only stretched out to like 6 innings. So he's like, all right, well, just let me know. Like, let me know if you're all right. I'm like, all right. But I kept going. Like I was punching people out with like 88-mile-an-hour fastballs. Like I remember just being like, I'm gonna get out. Like I'm gonna get guys out, and they're gonna pull me whenever it's time. Like we'll figure it out. And then it wasn't until when you hurt yourself, like you kind of got that adrenaline going. Whatever. It's not till the next day that you're like, yeah, I probably should have listened to my body a little bit because it wasn't good, man. Like it was like not feeling great, and then that whole injury.
I mean, that's a whole year,
I mean, dude, it ended up, so like, it ended up being a crazy thing because like I went and got like multiple different opinions because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like a full thickness tear. Like there was all kinds of stuff going on. So I tried doing the PRP, the stem cell, and rehabbing it because they kind of told me like, I asked them like, what are the chances this works? And they say 50-50. It either will or it won't. And I'm like, all right, well, it happened so early in the year that I'm like, well, if I try this stem cell and it works, even if worst case scenario, like I miss the rest of this season, like I can have a full off season, let this thing heal, and then come into 2017 and be ready to go. And like nothing happened. Whereas if you opt for Tommy John, like even in the first week of the season, like you're talking about nowadays it's like 14 months is the recommended recovery time. So you're talking about, I'm not even going to be ready until the 2017 All-Star break. So it's kind of like, I was just thinking about, all right, 2016's gone. Like, it's just not happening. But maybe I can get back for 2017. Whereas if I do Tommy John now, like, all I'm going to get is half of 17. So for me, it was like the difference in all of 17 or half of 17. So I just went for it. And talk about your fun process where they drill into your back and take out your bone marrow. And that was interesting. All for it not to work.
I was going to say, that's a whole another conversation.
And if I could go back, I would do it differently. But, it's like, again, like, you're a competitor, you're just trying to get out on the field, and you're trying to, like, sometimes with those things, like injuries, like, it's not even that, like, you're a competitor and you just want to play, right? Yeah. Like, you just want to be out there. And even if you're not at 100%, like, you just want to be out there. But it's also like that, like, denial of, like, people had told me, like, oh man, like, in all my draft stuff, like, hey, smooth, easy arm action, like, nice, like, loose and whippy body, like, flexible, like, all those things. Like, you hear that your whole life, and you, like, you feel good, and you're throwing, like, I was throwing the ball the best I ever had. So I was like, I'm not really, like, I didn't really tear my ligament. Like, I'm not really hurt. Like, this is just, like, a little thing. Like, this is something I'll just, like, rehab from. Like, you can't, it's a denial. Like, you can't just allow yourself to be that guy. Like, I never thought I was that guy. I never thought I'd be the guy that had Tommy John, like, that's part of it too, is just getting over that mental hurdle of, like, allowing yourself to come to grips with it.
Mm-hmm. And then you go through that process, and then I think it's been pretty smooth. I mean, you've had some great moments. You punch out 14 against the Rangers. You got your one-hit shutout against the Royals. With all of that process and the success that you've been able to have, and it's been fun to watch for me knowing you. But that experience you talked about of gaining the things to understand how to be a big league pitcher, do you feel like you've kind of arrived a little bit, or do you feel like all those nerves are pretty gone and now you're just playing baseball?
No, man. I mean, before every game, like, I feel like I'm about to puke. Like, it doesn't change, bro. Like, it doesn't change. Like,
I love it.
Like, you put enough pressure on yourself to compete, and to, like, I expect a lot out of myself, and I know other people do too. And so, like, that's good pressure. Like, you want that. Like, the day that I just roll into a game and don't give a shit, and I'm just like, I don't even care what happens here. Like, I'll just collect my check and go home. Like, that's the day that I'm going to hang them up, because, like, I don't know how anybody could operate that way, like, without, like, that drive and that motivation. So yeah, I would never say that I feel like I've arrived. Like, I like, you have to have that chip on your shoulder. You have to think, like, man, there's always people, like, I got named opening day starter this year. That's something I'm immensely proud of. But with that came, like, the understanding of, like, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm the ace of the staff. Like, hell no, I'm not going to say that. We got, like, a ton of good dudes. Like, Julio Teheran's been with the Braves and has had, like, 7 straight seasons of, like, a sub-4 ERA and 30 games started. Like, that dude's a stud. Like Bundy has done the same thing, taking the ball every single day and, like, thrown through a lot of stuff. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, like, I stand above those guys, or I'm leading this staff. Like, that would just be so ridiculous to say that. So for me, it's like, while it's an honor to, like, be an opening day starter, and maybe say, like, I would love to say that's the beginning of maybe, like, an upward trajectory, right? Like, first of all, that game never happened, so I guess I can't call myself an opening day starter. But, like, you talk about, like, arriving. Like, I got other things I want to do. Like, personally, I want to make that opening day start. I want to pitch on an all-star team. I want to pitch in the playoffs. I want to win games in the playoffs. Like, I want to do, like, there's so many things that, like, I don't feel like I've even gotten close to the tip of the iceberg. So, like, there's definitely no way I would say, like, oh, I've arrived, or I've like, no, like, it's like, dude, you're always climbing, always.
Absolutely. I love that. So for the kids out there listening to this, and they get a chance to feel your presence and what you've been able to talk about in the last half hour, that kid that is trying to find his own way throughout his own younger career, How does that kid get to the big leagues?
When I like a lot of times, like especially like younger kids that I talk to, like if we go to schools or if we're doing clinics or whatever, like there's choices and there's moments in your life where you're going to be able to make a good decision or a bad decision, a right decision or a wrong decision. And like every wrong decision you make puts you farther and farther away from the path you need to be on, right? Like, at some point when you get too far away from your path, man, you're lost. And like, this is your own journey. There's nobody out there to rescue you. There's nobody out there to tell you how to, like you got mentors, you got people that can help steer you, but you're the one making those decisions. So like, I just think like there's a lot of sacrifices that you have to make and things that you got to be willing to do or not do to even give yourself that opportunity. Like I can only speak from my personal experience. Like I went to college, I went to Oklahoma State. Like I legitimately did not like drink. I didn't like do drugs. I didn't do like anything like that. Not because I didn't want to, but because like, I just thought like, well, more often than not, that's going to lead you down a path that is not going to get you to where you want to go. Right. Like there's plenty of time in my life, like post baseball, I can go do whatever I want to do. Right. Like, so even like decisions like that, I mean, and there's all kinds of temptations and things that you want to do out in the world. And I'm not saying that every time you make a bad decision that it's going to come back and bite you. But when you start getting comfortable making bad decisions or easy decisions, easy choices, like it makes it that much easier to just say, oh, you drive drunk one time and you make it home, like, well, I'll just do it again. I'll do it again. But it's the one time that you do it and you end up killing yourself or killing somebody else, that it's like, well, it wasn't that one decision that led to that. It was the 10 times before that you got away with it, that you felt like, you know what I mean? Like that's just one example, but
yeah, but it's all relative. You can scan those examples over so many things. Staying up till 2:00 in the morning.
That's a big example, but just things like that, like even just simple things of like, man, I really don't want to go to the field today, man. I just like, I'd love to have my own personal day, right? Like
my own mental day.
You can't do that. Like you can't, and you get in pro ball and you start learning about, man, you take a you day, like, oh, I need a me day today. Like your teammates are not going to like you. Your training staff is not going to like you. Your coaching staff is not going to have glowing things to say about this dude that's just taking personal days. Like just little things like that, man, like that just limits your opportunity. That limits the number of people that want to stick their neck out for you. It limits the amount of time that you're spending getting better. I'm sure like we could share stories all the time about, you got that guy in AAA that wants a me day. He, pulls his hammy and he's just chilling for a few days and he's the fourth outfielder and, or the fifth outfielder in AAA, and the fourth outfielder in big leagues goes and gets hurt, or the starting outfielder, and you need that replacement. Like, well, you can't just say your hammy feels good now. Like,
nope,
you can't just say, like, you know what I mean? Like, we've had those experiences. We've all seen those dudes that have done that. And sometimes it still works out for them, which, like is pretty terrible. But those are the decisions that, man, like that could have been your opportunity to go up there and like make a name for yourself or take somebody's job, or at least just prove that you're, hey, I deserve to be up here. I can play here. You're always playing for 29 other teams. Like that's what everybody always says. So, I mean, for me, like that's how I think of it. Is it's just like day to day, like you got to make those decisions to not even just always to get better, but just to give yourself the opportunity to be seen or to be appreciated or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. And it's not always the decision that stares you in the face that is the right one or the wrong one. Sometimes it takes weeks or years to realize, oops, that decision I made, probably not the right one.
Or man, sometimes it's the decisions you don't make, or the places you don't go, or the people you don't hang out with, or the things you don't do. Like all those things, just over time, like all those things add up and either get you whatever you believe in, karma or just opportunity or whatever it may be, man. Mm-hmm. Like that stuff's real.
It really is. So now let's go. I'm going to ask you I'm going to give you one word. So this is the baseballism portion of our section. I'm just going to give you one word or like a short phrase, and you just give me the first thing that comes to your mind. It can be a story, it can be an elaboration, whatever. I'll just give you. I got 5 words. First one, 300 wins.
For me, that ain't happening, but for a lot of people, that might be. Those days might be numbered.
That's what I mean. Will they ever happen again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, I'm not a huge statistics guy, but I would say, I mean, who do we even have that's? I mean, there can't be anybody that's knocking on the door, right?
No.
The Verlanders, the Grinkies, none of those guys are getting close, are they?
Yeah, they might have just over 200, if not just slightly underneath.
And I mean, then you start talking about like who are the young studs now? Like, dude, I don't. Not the way the game's going.
Yeah. What about strike one?
I mean, that's the most important pitch. You know, like if you ask any pitcher, like that's what they talk about is it's strike one's the most important pitch.
What about sunscreen?
Rosin.
You a fan? You not a fan?
Yeah,
I know Trevor Bauer is not a fan.
I guess I can't out myself too much, but for the longest time, I never used anything. Man, just a little bit of sweat, maybe whatever leftover hair gel I may have in my hair just from getting to the field that day. And the balls are chalky, man. They're slippery. So I'm not saying I'm a flamethrower, but I'm definitely not trying to let one slip up and in on a guy. So, yeah, I mean.
As a position player, I want it.
Yeah.
Because I don't really even care if it increases your spin rate because hitting's hard enough. If you mean to tell me if your RPMs ramp up 500 more, that's not going to be harder to hit than it already is, as hard as it is to hit. So for me, I'd rather you know where your ball's going and me having to lock it in than me sitting in there going, all right, let's have an whoa.
Yeah.
And it's a hot day, especially in Anaheim. You get in the middle of July.
Yeah.
It ain't cold.
Sweaty.
Yeah. Tell me about pants up.
Is it pants up or is it high socks?
What is it?
I don't know. We were debating that a while ago, in like, you know, back in the day when we were in spring training. But I don't know. I mean, I would say pants up, but a lot of guys say like high socks or whatever. But I've always gone pants up. To me, it's a comfort thing. Like when my pants are down, like I feel like, I don't know, it just gets like caught on my knee when I lift, and I just feel like it's like getting tangled in the bed sheets. Like it's like too, like, you know, you just got all this cloth like tangling you up. So like when you pull your pants up around your knees, and then it's like kind of gives you a little bit more freedom.
I would say pants up because if I wear my socks high, but my pants are over my cleats, my socks are still high.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair. That makes sense. That's absolutely logical.
That's a way I could look at it. Trying to be logical at least.
Yeah.
The last one, I'm going to go with tradition.
Tradition. I don't know.
I say that because playing with the Angels, I didn't think they had much tradition, but to this day, and I think for the rest of my life, anytime I hear Calling All Angels, it's going to give me goosebumps like it did before every game. And I think there is a tradition in LA, but it's not really marketed. It's not really open. But when you watch that video, you start to realize that, wow, you're a part of something that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah. I would say when I think of the tradition, especially like in the situation I'm in with the Angels, like, I mean, you got dudes like that are always around, you know, the Darren Erstads and well, I guess he's not always around, but, you know, he's around. I mean, Tim Salmon's always around, and those guys, Mark Langston, Rod Carew, like the greats of the Angels, like just being around, like getting even, you know, Clyde Wright, like comes into the clubhouse, is always clowning around. Like to me, like it's just the tradition of like just the brotherhood of baseball. Like to me, those are the things, like it's so interesting to hear from those guys about how they played the game, how their experiences, what they, not even just like, almost just more like a lifestyle of like what it meant to be in the big leagues, you know, for some of those dudes in 1960s, 1980s, 1990s, whenever it may have been. It's always really interesting to just kind of hear their stories. And like, I probably don't spend enough time like just, you know, talking to those dudes and kind of getting those stories. And you know what, like kind of, you'll have to fact check me on this, but you start talking about the Angels, like I think they have like the fourth oldest stadium in the big leagues, maybe fifth oldest. It's like Fenway, Wrigley, Dodger Stadium, and then in Anaheim. Like I'm pretty sure, like, so I mean,
it doesn't feel old
weird because it seems weird, but like when you just, I mean, not franchise wise, but when you just talk about like the stadium and kind of how long they've been like entrenched in that community and stuff, like it's pretty crazy to think how long they've been there.
It's very true. And Heen, thanks for taking the time to come on here, man. I'm very appreciative, and I just enjoy the stories being told because the stories they last the test of time.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me, D-Rob. Love it.